Get ready for more stories you've not heard before, but will enjoy hearing again and again and again.
No makeup, guys.
And if you're a true blue country fan, you might want to watch the end of the tape after the show for some extra special country material you might enjoy. But right now, settle back and watch Bobby Bare sing Detroit City. Jim Ed Brown and Goldie Hill singing I Was Looking Back to See. That's a song the Browns had a hit with back in the 50s. One also that Justin Tubb and Goldie Hill had a hit with in the 50s. Jimmy Dickens does Good Old Mountain Dew. And Charlie Walker gets some country swing going with Pick Me Up on Your Way Down. Now from the halls and the makeup room, from the coffee machine and the snack table, let's gather them all up, sit them down, and get them started.
Talking about us helping each other. I've got a prize photograph at home. We were coming out of Prince Edward Island up off the eastern, in the Maritimes of Canada. And the only way you could get on and off the island in those days was on a ferry boat. And my bus got right down to the edge of the water and would not go on the ferry boat. I have got a picture of my band and me and Mother Maybelle Carter pushing my bus onto a ferry boat. Mama Maybelle pushing that bus because we had to get where we're. Yeah, that really. You said you had an airplane story.
I was coming out of Dallas, and I flew down to Houston and then on over to Miami and then up to West Palm Beach. And when I got on the plane, there was a young lady sitting by the window who was asleep. And so I sat down in the seat and I promptly went to sleep. And every time I woke up, she was asleep. And I guess every time she woke up, I was asleep. And as she got off of the plane in Miami, she leaned over and said, "I've really enjoyed sleeping with you."
Bill, we had a bus that constantly was breaking down from time to time, one of the older buses. And this went on for about 2 years, though. Every time we would break down, about an hour later, here would come Merle Travis. I don't know where he come from. Yeah, he fixed buses on the side. Every time we broke down, about 5 or 6 different times. And finally, we broke down one day, and we just sat there looking down the road waiting for Travis to come along. He never showed up.
Hey, Bill. Charlie Walker has not. Charlie, you haven't said a word today, and I know you've got as many road stories and music business stories as anybody in the world. Share something.
I've been enjoying it so much hearing all these other guys' stories that I just been sitting back listening. No, I know a few stories, and I know several stories on my friend Roy Acuff. Roy and I travel together on a lot of things, and on some of our overseas trips, and we kind of joined up together. And he told me one of the funniest stories that I can ever remember. Of course, he told stories about them driving along in a car, and Oswald can tell you about that. Maybe they said in those days there was no motels. We just take it for granted, you know. There was no motels until the early 50s. And the only place you could stay if you checked into in a town was at the Waldorf Astoria in New York or the Adolphus Hotel in Dallas. And if you hadn't had a bath in 3 or 4 days and you didn't feel like checking in at a fancy hotel. And so he said they would be going down the road, and Oswald was grinning, and they'd see a creek out there someplace. They'd all get out and wash their underwear and take a little sponge off and then get back in the car. And he said they'd hang their shorts and stuff out the windows on the car so it'd be dry time when they got to the next place. But one of the funny stories he told me was Roy, he'd get like, you know how your throat will clog up if you're a professional singer. And so what he would do, he would say, "Come out! Come out!" He'd come out, you know, and he'd get his throat cleared. He said they'd been flying all night from someplace, and they got into the airport, and he had to go to the men's room. And he got in there, and of course it was 7 o'clock in the morning. There was saw nobody in there. He was clearing his throat. He said, "Come out!" There was a fella in the stall that he didn't see him in there. And the guy said, "I'm hurrying just as fast as I can." Roy said, "It embarrassed me so bad I just broke and ran out of the place."
Bobby Bare, we need a song out of you.
Well, I probably got a few.
I figured you probably did.
Somebody gonna have to hold the mic.
Skeeter B. is Mike stand there.
Why don't I do Detroit City?
I think that's the one you ought to do, and we'll all sing.
This is a song I'd had 2 or 3 hits before this, but this is the song that made me realize one day that I would never have to get a real job again. I could sing this song. Skeeter, would you hold this for me? This is what I did. I did that intro. I want everybody to sing along with me on this. I want to go home. I want to go home. Oh, I want to go home. Last night I went to sleep in Detroit City, and I dreamed about those cotton fields and home. Dreamed about my mother, their old papa, sister, and brother. Dreamed about that girl who's been waiting for so long. I want to go home. I want to go home. Oh, I want to go home. Home folks think I'm big in Detroit City. From the letters that I write, they think I'm fine. But by day I make the cars, by night I make the marks. If only they could read between the lines. 'Cause you know, I rode a freight train north to Detroit City. And after all these years, I find I just been wasting my time. So I just think I'll take my foolish pride, put it on a southbound freight and ride. Go on back to the loved ones, the ones I left waiting so far behind. I want to go home. I want to go home. Oh, I want to go home. I want to go home. Y'all doing real good. I want to go home. Oh, I want to go home. Thank you.
Boy, you want to get a big hand on that song. Sing it overseas for a group of servicemen.
Oh, I've done it.
Boy, they will sing it with you in a minute.
I've done it. You know, that was written by Mel Tillis and Danny Dill, 2 of my all-time favorite people. And Mel, everybody here really is, I love everybody here. I'm serious. I looked around this place a while ago and I saw everybody in the world that I love sitting here looking right at me. And people who I've been a fan of everybody here since I was a kid. Since I was this high.
I wanted to mention one thing, too, that maybe not everybody realizes. Bobby Bare won the first Grammy Award that was ever presented in country music.
Really? Hey.
That year, they gave, just for one country record, either, gender didn't matter, 1963.
1963.
And it was for Detroit City?
Well, I got to brag on me, because nobody knows this stuff about me. But in 1959, they had a Grammy only in California. And I got next to the song Jimmy Driftwood, Battle of New Orleans. But nobody knows that, see, because it wasn't on TV then. And so, and we didn't have a Nashville chapter. But I was leading the way for you, Bobby, way back then. Set him free, set him free.
Well, the truth is, when somebody told me that you have been nominated for a Grammy Award, I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it, and it wasn't on TV then. We were doing it in L.A. They gave it to me. I didn't know what it was, and for years. Then, I know how it came about. Oh, Joe Allison knows. Joe was my boss kind of back then.
I was going to tell you, too, that I was in Kenya, Africa, in Nairobi. Oh, sorry, Joe. I just going to talk about that song. It made me almost cry and got to hold the mic for you there, but I was in Nairobi, Kenya in 1974, and everything I was hearing in my hotel was all the music from the Afrikaners, you know, playing out there. And then as I was going to sleep that night and everything after I'd done my concert, and then all of a sudden with all the steel drums and everything, I wanted to go home out there. And it was wonderful to be there. And I even went back my second time to go back and even stayed longer. But it was so great, and it never sounded so great as it did there and that night. You know, they tried, you know, but it was great.
Well, you know, Skeeter, I got a gold record from South Africa on Detroit City and a couple other things, too. What were you going to say, Joe?
Well, how the Grammys came into existence for country people.
You say come out.
Excuse me, come out, come out. Thank you. I get so choked up with emotion when I tell this story. But I was on the board of the Grammys in California. Bobby was one of my writers way out there at the time. He and Charlie Williams and Buddy Mize and Ned Miller, we had quite a good bunch of guys. But I had a song that I had written that was tied for the top song of the year. Not country, not anything else, but it was for the top 5 songs finalists in the pop music business, and that year, Theme from a Summer Place won. And I told them, I said, I may never have another chance to win a country Grammy, and if we had had a country category this year, he'll have to go might have won one. I said, why in the heck don't we put the country category in? Well, we're talking about it. I said, no, you didn't hear me. I said, let's put it in. Let's do it now. And next year, let's have a country thing. So we sat at big tables, so they stacked them up with records like this. Steve Sholes would be over here. I'd have a table. A jazz guy would be here. A classical guy there. And they'd say, what is this? Oh, that's folk. Well, give it to me then. So we would put the records on the right table so they could be nominated. And the one that won the first country Grammy, and I'm glad I was responsible for it, someone held up a Burl Ives record. And they said, oh, that's folk, give it to me. And I said, what's the name of it? He said, Funny Way of Laughing. I said, no, that's mine. That's a country thing. Bring it over here. So it got on my table and ended up winning the first country Grammy that year. But they weren't going to put it in. I just insisted. And, of course, all my country buddies helped, too. But that was the first one. Bobby won in all categories, not country, not anything. It was the top song of the year when he won.
Hey, guys, you know something I found out that I didn't realize? You know, the group called the Springfields had the big hit record on Silver Threads and Golden Needles in the United States. Mosquito Davis over here. Your record was the big record in England?
Yeah. And a lot of the countries over there. And so when they came to town here, they wanted to meet me. And, of course, when I went over there, I wanted to meet them. And we did get to meet each other and had a good, nice time together and everything. Dusty Springfield is still one of my favorites, and she's still doing well, too.
Oh, what about this group you got sitting in front of you here?
Well, they're all right, too. We toured England, went to England and Scotland and everything, too. So, and we love this song every night.
And they loved them.
Oh, yeah.
Well, of course, what's not to love?
At that time, there was a lot of me to love.
Can we get the band cranked up and do a little Silver Threads and Golden Needles, everybody?
Yeah. I don't want your lonely mansion with a tear in every room. All I want is the love you promised beneath the halo of the moon.
But you think I should be happy with your money and your name and drown
you play your teeth game. Silver threads and golden needles cannot mend this heart of mine, and I dare not drown my sorrow in the warm glow of your wine. You can't buy my love with money, for I never was that kind. Silver threads and golden needles cannot mend this heart of mine.
Silk and satin, where love's a passing game. I grew up in checks of gingham, where love's a sacred thing. I know now you never loved me, and I know I was a fool to think your pride would let you live by the golden rule.
Silver threads and golden needles cannot mend this heart of mine, and I dare not drown my sorrow in the warm glow of your wine. Can't buy my love with money, for I never was that kind. Silver threads and golden needles cannot mend this heart of mine. Silver threads and golden needles cannot mend this heart of
That's great. Emmett Brown has sung a lot with the ladies over the years, Maxine and Bonnie, and then with Helen Cornelius. Yeah. I think we got a lady over here in the corner that you need to sing with today.
But can I walk over that way?
Go right ahead.
All right, y'all just let me go over here, because Maxine and I wrote a song way back yonder in whenever we first started out in this.
19 what?
And we recorded it on a little label called Faber Records, and we didn't have it out very long until excuse me, I didn't mean to step on your toe. Get it out, it's too big. But we wasn't out very long until there was a couple here in Nashville recorded the song and put it out on record, named Goldie Hill and Justin Tubb. And they had a big record of it, and we got a lot of money from them. And I sure was. Hey, since you recorded it, would you sing it with me?
You think we ought to rehearse first?
Well, I'm not Carl. Rehearse? What's that?
No, we don't rehearse.
I don't know if anybody else has rehearsed very much here.
Well, that gives me an excuse if I make a mistake. We didn't rehearse.
Oh, well, no, we're not supposed to rehearse.
Oh, okay.
This is all, just, pardon? I'm a lot better than Justin, that's right. Pardon? I'm taller, too, yeah. Fellas, in about the key of G, I think it is. I was looking back to see if you were looking back to see if I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me. You were cute as you could be, standing looking back at me, and it was plain to see that I'd enjoy your company. One Sunday afternoon, as I was riding down the street, I met a cute little girl, all dressed up so sweet, and the way that she was stacked, I wish I had a Cadillac. But who'd notice me just a driving this Model T? I was looking back to see if you were looking back to see if I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me. You were cute as you could be, standing looking back at me, and it was plain to see that I'd enjoy your company.
Listen, baby, it don't matter to me. Even in your Model T, you're as cute as you can be. If
you'll take me for a ride, I will sit close by your side. And I will guarantee we'll have fun, oh man alive. I was looking back to see if you were looking back to see if I was looking back to see if you were looking back at me. You were cute as you could be, standing looking back at me. And it was plain to see that I'd enjoy your company.
You know what, Bill? She doesn't sing very much. Carl says she can sing anytime she's not cooking or washing dishes. So she doesn't get to sing a whole lot.
Ooh. Well, she sounded great. I think that was a new duet born right there, Goldie Hill and Jim Ed Brown.
I always loved to sing with pretty ladies. She's one of the prettiest.
Well, now you and Helen are back singing together.
Yes,
again,
we are,
right?
in Pigeon Forge, that's true, at the Eagle Mountain Theater. Helen and I have, all this past year we were together, and we're doing it another time this year. And it's great. I have a lot of fun, because, of course, I love to sing harmony, and I love to sing when I don't have a cold like I have today, but, you know, those things are...
Maxine and Bonnie been coming back and singing with you a good bit.
Yes, they have.
Yeah.
They sure have. Well, in fact, we recorded a new gospel album and had a lot of fun, and we're doing a new... Well, I'll say it now because it's not released, but we're doing an acoustic album, something that I've always wanted to do. Just pretty music, pretty songs, pretty words, and of course the pretty harmony of the Browns.
Oh. Yeah. Look forward to that. Billy Walker, was it you said you wanted to tell Farron Young stories?
Well, I've got one. Maybe 1,000 of them.
We've all got them. I don't know whether we can tell them or not.
Well, since we were talking about Goldie and Carl, and we were on a tour together, me and Carl Smith and Billy Grammer and Wanda Jackson, and on this tour with Farron. And we were in Ogden, Utah. And, you know, Shelley Snyder that used to manage Farron, they had promoted this date out there. And so there's an old boy by the name of Casanova Jack that used to be in Nashville, and he had moved out to Ogden, and he talked Shelley Snyder into having us to come over and sing one song at his nightclub after the show at the auditorium so he could get the overflow crowd. And so Carl and I were on right before Farron, and we were in this limo being taken over to this club, and Carl says, I know what the good sheriff's going to do. He said he's going to get us over here, and he's going to start a lot of trouble, and he's going to expect us big guys to get him out of it. He said, it's happened too many times. So he said, hey, tell you what let's do. He said, we'll sing our song, and then we'll wait till the sheriff comes in, and then so he'll know that we're there. And then let's me and you catch a cab and go back to the motel, because we had to go on to another date. All of us did the next day. So we got in there. We did the show at the auditorium, went over to the club, and we sang our song, and we waited for the whirlwind to arrive.
Farron Young.
Yeah, Farron Young. And so he sashayed in there, and of course, you know, he went up to the stage and he starts singing. And so Carl and I, we caught this cab and we went back to the motel. And the next morning we had a checkout time. We was all leaving at the same time. He come down with this great big black eye. He said, where in the heck was you guys when I needed y'all last night?
We're on the Farron Young stories, are we?
Go.
Me and little Jimmy Dickens and Farron Young had played Madison, Wisconsin. Now, you all know where that's at because you played that little theater. It's a big theater, about 15 to 18, 2,000 seater, right downtown. So the promoter, I guess I think Dickens had done his show as well. And we had somebody else on the show. I can't remember who it was. Maybe you'll remember. But anyway, the promoter come by and says, we found out he didn't have any money. That he ain't got no money. And Farron said, let's go to your office. You're going to get me some money. You're going to get it. You're going to call the sheriff. You're going to do something because you're going to get our money. So we was walking down the hallway. The promoter's first. Farron was behind him. And little Dickens was was behind Farron, and I'm behind little Jim. And the motor turned around and said, you know, I may not, he didn't get no more out than that. Farron hit him. I mean, knocked him down, and Farron just kept going. And he was pulling his arm backwards and forward like this, and little Jimmy Dickens was on it, saying, oh, Lord, Farron, oh, Lord, Farron, don't hit him again. Don't hit him again, Farron, don't hit him again.
Tatum, you want to tell your side of that?
Yeah.
Boy, you can make them up.
You know it's the truth. You remember we went in there?
I was just trying to referee a fight. That's all I was trying to do.
He was trying to referee a fight. But we went in there and he got that money. Remember that?
Yeah, praise the Lord. He got the money.
Yeah, Farron Young was,
That guy
I
didn't
think
want no more of that.
everybody here
Yeah.
loved Farron. I got along with him his whole life. I wrote 2 big hits for Farron. One was called It's a Great Life If You Don't Weaken. But the song, I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I wrote his life song, his theme song, called Live Fast, Love Hard, Die Young, and Leave a Beautiful Memory. And when you just put a melody to the title, you don't have to write anymore. It's all done. But one of my favorite Farron Young stories is he had a car wreck and he bit his tongue off, if y'all will remember. And they sewed it back on and put him in the hospital and wired his jaw all up, and he couldn't talk. So his manager and several of his friends took a bunch of cards, white cards, about 8 by 8 inches square, a whole stack of them, and they put a different tacky word on each card. Just one word on each card, but it wasn't a socially acceptable word. So they took this stack of cards over to the hospital and they said, Farron, we know your jaw's wired up and you can't talk and you're at a disadvantage, but we know that you want to communicate with your doctors and your nurses, so we've brought you your vocabulary.
Bill, then when I wrote my book, I gave Farron a copy because there's a few stories in there about Farron and fun things that happened and everything, and he was there, and he read them and he laughed about it. Well, the only negative letter I received about that book was a fan of Farron's in Soddy Daisy, Tennessee. And I told Farron about it, and I said, she was really upset about this particular story. And he said, if she had any sense at all, she'd know you had to clean it up to even put it in print. But you know, Farron loved to play golf. And we had a mutual friend who's a minister. His name's Bob Kurtz. And Bob was a great golfer. And Farron and Bob and I would go play golf. And Bob loved Farron. And somebody asked Farron what he did, you know, with Bob, you know, being a minister, and do you have to watch what you say? And he said, no, I just cuss and he prays for me. But he was good.
I think Roger Miller may have described Farron the best of anybody in the world. He said the only thing bigger than Farron Young's mouth was his heart. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
Amen.
I stopped in a filling station in Franklin the other day, and this man said, boy, I saw those tapes, and they were awesome. And I really loved some of the stories they told about Farron Young. And he said, you know, Farron came in here about 30 years ago, and he said, I pumped gas for him, and he walked in, and he said, I like you, man, and I'm going to deal with you until I die. And he said he was a customer until he died. If he liked you, he liked you. And if he didn't, he told you so.
Jeannie Pruitt, you were close with Marty Robbins. You said you had something about Marty you wanted to share.
Well, I tell you what, as y'all all know, Marty had the greatest gift of gab in the world on stage. When he started talking to the fans, the first few years of his career, he didn't do a whole lot of talking. In fact, his business, I think Lightning Chance used to MC his shows. But then he got where he really liked that talking on stage, and right after he had his first heart attack and came back to work, we were working a show someplace up in Ohio, and there was a guy came in late. There was about 4 songs into the show, and this guy came in, I mean, he was knee-walking drunk. coming down the hall just hollering and screaming. He was hollering to Marty to start over and do all them songs that you've done that I've missed. And the old man told him, he said, no, it don't work that way, Chief. You should have got here on time for the show. He said, I'm halfway into the show now, and he said, I'll have to go on. He said, no, you've got to start over and do all these shows. Well, he just kept arguing back and forth with the old man. The old man told him, said, look, this house full of women and children here. Said, you can't do that vulgar talking that you're doing there. You're going to have to stop that, or I'm going to have to come off the stage and stop you. And that guy jumped up, and got real froggy, and he said, well, just come on down here. Well, the old man laid that little guitar down on the stool beside him, just turkey walked right off of the stage and went down there after the guy. And the policeman was standing right beside of me, and Don Winters, of course, he followed Marty right off of the stage because he was a big guy too, And and I told the policeman, I said, hey, this ain't part of the show. He thought this was part of the act, And he was just kind of laying back, waiting for things just to take the natural course, And I said, go get that guy. I said, this ain't part of Marty's show. This something bad fixing to happen here. So the policeman got on down there, and he got that guy just before Marty got to where he was sitting. So the old man come back up on the stage, picked up his little guitar, and done that funny little laugh of his, and he says, I hope y'all know I was willing to take a beating for you here today, because you're my people.
Any of y'all ever had anything like that happen where somebody thought it was part of the show?
Part of the show?
You were doing something that was part of the show and it really wasn't?
Homer and Jethro were the greatest in the world at putting somebody down.
Oh, yeah.
They were the masters. When you went to their show, you sat there and either applauded or kept your mouth shut, because they could tear you in so many little pieces. I can't repeat all of them. Hey, we got a guy here that's traveled twice as far as any of us and back several times, holding that dobro on his lap over there.
Bashful Brother Oswald.
He's got some of the greatest stories in the world.
Can you tell any of them, Oz?
Let me tell one on Oswald. Oz, can I tell a story on you?
Very little.
Well, the first time I was ever on the Grand Ole Opry in 1962, I was living in Springfield, Missouri, and I made my first trip to Nashville as a guest on the Grand Ole Opry. And this happened, I'd never even been to the Ryman Auditorium and seen it, and I was there that night, and I was just thinking a while ago, just about like this. I was surrounded by my heroes and heroines, and brushing shoulders with people that I idolized, and it's just a tremendous experience. And I'm standing there at the edge of the stage, and I'm on Roy Acuff's show. And I did he called me out, and I did my first song, and just a spattering of mild applause, and I went off, because I was scared to death. And by the second show, the 10 o'clock show, he called me out, and I was a little bit better shape, I guess, and I got an encore. When I got through, they was clapping real strong, and I turned to start to go away, and Roy put his arm around me and said, son, it looked like they want to hear a little more, and pulled me back up to the microphone. Well, now, Oz is backstage, and this is the place where he usually runs out and stomps his big old feet on the stage, and sounds like a watermelon being thrown off a 10-story building when it hits the concrete. Well, that's kind of what it was. But I didn't know that. So he says he wanted to hear a little more, so I'm just fixing to start in, and my heart is just bursting with pride, and I'm fixing to do my encore on the Grand Ole Opry. When I hear the darndest sound I have ever heard in my life. Wow! Just a honk, and I see a figure running out of the corner of my eye for the edge of the stage. I have no idea what is going on. It scared me to death. And, of course, it's Oswald, not knowing I've got an encore, and he's fixing to do his comedy routine. Well, he come running out there, and he come right to the edge of the stage, and if you've ever seen that television newsreel thing where they show an airplane trying to take off of a carrier, and it don't quite make it, and it falls into the ocean. Well, Oswald's big old foot got caught in the wire of the speaker, and he just went head first right off the edge of the stage and landed right in the middle of a big old fat woman in the front row. And the crowd just exploded, just absolutely exploded. And I'm standing there, and of course I just kind of slink off stage, and I go on back to the dressing room and put my guitar. I'm sitting there, and a little while later, Roy Acuff comes in, and he must have been looking for me. He come over there and put his arm on my shoulder and said, "Don't feel bad about your encore." He said, Oz was entertaining those folks. So remember this. He said, The only reason we're here is to entertain them friends and neighbors out there, make them have a good time. And I guarantee you, they'll never forget the time that Oz flew off the end of the stage. And he said, Stan, you were a part of it, so you can be proud. You did your job good tonight. Well, it taught me that wonderful lesson that no matter how good you've done, somebody else can run right along behind you and side of you and take off and do it better and just bring the house down. And so I never have had a chance to say thank you, Brother Oswald. And I'm just as serious I can be to thank you, Brother Oswald, because you taught me a good lesson, son.
Stan, I think that was in the days when Oswald would partake in a grease cutter or two.
He had a little bit of the aroma of Tootsie's Orchid Lounge about him.
After that,
I love y'all.
We all love y'all. How about picking one for us?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
What do you like?
Whatever you got ready.
C major.
C major, boy.
Tonight if it don't rain.
Yeah.
Bill, hold that mic down to this.
I will.
Give us a little laugh.
Hey, Bill, Oz, in his book, he's got a great book, and if you've never read it, he finished it, what, a couple of years ago? He's got some of the greatest stories in there. Anyway, Oz and all the Smoky Mountain Boys and Roy Acuff, they were up in Canada. Well, they give you a card up there to buy whiskey with. And they stamp it every time you get a jug of whiskey. Well, Oz and Howdy Forster had kind of overindulged on their card, all punched out. So they had to get a new card. And he didn't want to use his real name because they had it on the list there, you know, Oswald. And he says, Howdy, what am I going to do? Howdy says, tell him your name is Clarence. Oz picked up his pencil. How do you spell Clarence?
Is that the truth? Have you ever heard it?
Guy gave me a whiskey and said, go on through.
You know who's been quiet today? I think the only person in this room that hadn't spoken or sung is Jack Green. Are you mad at the rest of us, or what?
I'm really enjoying taking all this in. He's writing a book. I've got me some road stories now.
You've always had some road stories.
Yeah. Well, these are stories I can tell on the road now about all y'all. I'm learning a lot today. That's great.
Sing us one.
We got a great song here that Grandpa recorded the song, and he wrote it. Yeah, sung it many times on the Opry. And the first time I ever saw Grandpa, I was in the Army, and I was stationed in Colorado, and I got the chance to go to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to go to the engineer school. And while I was in Fort Belvoir, Virginia, I got a chance to go to a Saturday night shindig somewhere around Washington, D.C. And that's where I saw Grandpa Jones for the first time. And I was really impressed with him then. And of course, he lives in Goodlettsville, where everything's good, where I live. And he's been a neighbor of mine for years, and a wonderful guy. Ask everybody to join in with us, because everybody knows this song. You've heard him sing it 100 times. By the graveside of this true forgotten man, on this cold fallen leaves that lie scattered on the ground. The birds and flowers that we hear now can't be found. All his friends that he once knew are not around. They are scattered like the leaves upon the ground. Some folks drift along through life and never thrill to the feeling that a soon feel can until it's too late when they are ready to lie down there beneath the leaves that scattered on the ground. Lord, let my eyes see every need of every man. Make me stop and always lend a helping hand. And when I'm laid beneath a little grassy mound, there'll be more friends around than leaves upon the ground. Grave is no taking any gold. You cannot use it when it's time for hands to fold. When you leave this earth for a better home someday, the only thing you'll take is what you gave away.
Bill, this sounds like a flagrant plug for your book, but you know that your book, whatever the title of it is, it's about 2 inches long. What's the title of that storybook of yours?
I hope you're living as high on the hog as the pig you turned out to be.
Yeah. It's got a lot of these stories in it. Tell us your favorite story from that book, would you please?
Oh, I didn't ask you to do this.
Well, but I will get some of the royalties, right on?
Well, no, well, we're talking about Grandpa, and you know what has struck me today? Every time Grandpa's name has come up, Jack just said he lives in Goodlettsville, not he lived in Good. We talk about him in the present tense, just like he's here with us. And I know Bill Carlisle probably feels his loss is deeper than anybody. Is the story true about the day that you were going to meet Grandpa not long before he passed away at the Cracker Barrel, and Grandpa was late?
I called him and asked him if he wanted somebody to go with him to have dinner, and George Riddle and I, George was going to take me over to the Cracker Barrel, and Grandpa, that's where he always likes to go. I said, Grandpa, come by the house, and we'll all go together from my house. And he called. I said, no, you call me when you get ready to leave. And he called me. He said, I'll be over in a little bit. And so I sat there and waited over an hour. And he didn't show up, and I told George, I said, he might be at the Cracker Barrel. And we went over there, and he was mad.
That's his speed.
Yeah, he was, boy, just sitting there, looked like a bull, you know. And I said, Grandpa, something come up, and I had to, my wife, I had to run and get something for her, you know. She can't drive or anything. And I talked real pitiful about my wife, and he come around there, and everything was all right. But he told me he'd meet me at my house, and 3 or 4 times I said, now, you come over and you can ride with us. And I'll tell you something else about him, can I? Grandpa, he was, well, I told you about yeah, but did I tell the other time about him going to go to Sunday school with me?
No.
Huh? Yeah, did I? I believe I did. Ain't no need in chewing your back or twice. I tell you, I'll think about it maybe next time we do the film next year. I can come up with it. Okay. I'll tell you what I want to do. Do you know Liz? Yeah. Well, me and Liz was on our first date. We was sitting at this red light having to wait. This old boy walked up with a big possum grin. He just opened the car door and crawled right in. I know, what kind of deal is this? You know, the thing that was getting me the most was the way this old boy seemed to feel his oats. Man, he was really getting under my skin. Sitting over at that big stupid grin, and I thought, boy, what kind of deal is it? I knew it wasn't right, boy. I knew it wasn't right. You know, what could I say? I just thought I'd let it go along that way. Pretty soon, I seen I was out on a limb, because I couldn't kiss her without kissing him. And man, I thought, now, wait a minute, what kind of deal is this? And I stopped the car and I said, look here, Liz, you better tell me who this guy is. She said, I don't know him. I thought he was your friend. I said, well, if you don't know him, what's he doing here then? I just stopped the car and I grabbed him by the collar and jerked him out of the car. I said, man, I ain't never seen nobody like you are. How come you pull these kind of jokes? He said, well, sometime it works and sometime it don't.
Hey, Bill. Hey. Bill? I've got to tell a Bill Carlisle story. Well, and this won't take but a second, but he and I were going up through Kentucky to go to a date one time, and he said, we're going right by Churchill Downs, and they're having a race today, so I want to show you how to make some money. So we went in and we bet on the first race and lost. We bet on the second race and lost. Third and fourth race we lost. And the fifth and sixth we did the same. I went through $125 so fast it'd make your head swim.
I tried to teach you how to not gamble anymore.
And it worked, Bill. It worked.
Hey, Bill. Yeah. We were talking about Grandpa getting angry and mad. It reminds me of a story where Hee Haw did a benefit in the Municipal Auditorium. And I laid out a schedule, and everyone was assigned how many songs they're going to do and what time I thought they would be on. And if you've ever been to the Municipal Auditorium, it's like they have no dressing room. It's like being in jail back there. It's real cold. And watch out. Once somebody starts passing a bottle around, you just never get anything done. Well, as the story goes, Pa was scheduled to be on at 10 o'clock. Well, some of the gang got up there, and, of course, they weren't feeling any pain. I got up there, instead of doing one song, they did 3 songs. And Pa kept saying to me, well, what time am I going to go on? I said, well, Pa, I think right now about 10:15. And 10 minutes later, he said, what time am I going to go on? And I said, well, it'll be 11 o'clock. We finally got him on at midnight. He went on and did a couple of songs. He went back into the dressing room, and I could tell he was mad. So I followed him back to the dressing room, and he took his banjo, and he slammed it into the banjo case, and he looked at me and he said, the nicest thing about doing a benefit is you don't have to sit around and wait for the check.
I heard a different punchline, Carlisle, on the story about you being late to the restaurant. Yeah. Somebody told me that you walked in there and said, you know, have you been waiting long? And Grandpa said, no, I just read the Encyclopedia Britannica. The whole thing while he was waiting for you.
Bill, I got to tell this about Grandpa. We was up in Canada, and I had flew up there, and Grandpa had his car up there. And I said, Grandpa, can I ride back to the hotel with you? Yeah. So we got in there, and we could not find that hotel. We could see the top of the light, you know, of the hotel, but we couldn't get there. And he said, well, I'll stop up here and ask this guy. Said, just watch. He won't know. Well, sure enough, the guy said, I'm a stranger here. You know? So anyway, he asked the guy said, no, I don't know anything. And Grandpa said, that's what I thought, Otto Kruger von Hoffenstein. And I bought me a dog, a Schnauzer dog, about a year later, and I named that dog Otto Kruger von Hoffenstein.
Were you with Grandpa at the time he was asking directions to the auditorium? And everybody would give him different directions? And finally, about the 4th person, he asked how to get to the auditorium. The guy said, well, just go right down here. You can't miss it. Grandpa reached out and grabbed him and said, don't tell me I can't miss it.
Bill, I have one story that I wanted to tell about Grandpa. Probably everybody in this room has heard it, but it's very special to me because it was very early in my career. It was right after Don't Touch Me hit, and Grandpa and I were doing some show, I don't remember what, and we were sharing a makeup mirror, and it was so hot in there. And back then, Grandpa was still drawing the lines around his eyes and putting the powder, the gray in his hair. And the more makeup we'd put on, the hotter it got, and so we'd blot it off. And finally, I turned to Grandpa and I said, "Is this a bunch of crap, Pa?" And he said, "Yes, it is. But," he said, "as time goes on, my job's going to get a lot easier." And he just left it hanging there. So during the years since, when I've been trying to put that erase those lines, I thought of him often. One other thing, too, when I had a car wreck in '77 and had the broken jaw and wired together. And by the way, Joe Allison probably knows part of this story. Just because I couldn't talk, which is a difficult time for me to go through, I want you to know. Yeah. I had a magic slate, you know, so that I could write a question to people. And it was always crazy because people would take my magic slate and write their answer, and I'd snatch it back so I can hear. You know? But anyway, we went out, my ex and I went out on the lake just to get away from the phones and all of this, and ran into Merle Travis and Grandpa Jones, and they'd been fishing, and they'd caught some fish, and they were up on the bank, had them a fire, and they were fixing to fry their fish, and they invited us to join them. And when they saw the magic slate, they took my magic slate. I'd give anything if this was on a tablet, because one would write something and draw a cartoon, hand it to the other, and they'd laugh, and they'd whip it off, you know, and draw another one back. I guess Merle was a great cartoonist, and I think Grandpa did pretty good, too, the way they laughed. They didn't always let me see him. I don't know why that was.
Yeah, Merle was a world-class cartoonist. He was wonderful.
I got one more Grandpa story. We was up in Illinois, and our bus, Grandpa parked, and we pulled our bus right up behind his car. Well, that's back when white Levi's were in. And so some guy come to pick his wife up that had been working there. Well, in the meantime, we had moved our bus, and this guy backed his car in where it was back to Grandpa's. So he was waiting for his wife to come out, or his girlfriend, and Grandpa was putting his banjo and everything in his trunk. And this guy was sitting there gunning his motor, and Grandpa was standing right there where the exhaust was hitting him. Every time he had gunned that motor, that black smoke come out there and just get all over them white Levi's. Grandpa kept looking, you know, and after about 5 minutes, he walked up there and he picked on the guy's window. The guy rolled the window down, and Grandpa goes, "Brun, brun, 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 brun."
Do you remember?
I fell out the bus door.
Grandpa's story. At the Grand Ole Opry each year for the past 28, 29 years, we have our annual duck hunt that we go on. We went this time, and Grandpa was rooming with me. And he only got to hunt one day, and he had to get up the next morning at 4 o'clock and drive back to Nashville to take Ramona to some social that he didn't want to go to. And he was mad all the day before. And he didn't want to wake me up. He got up, and he's had one little crack in the bathroom door with the light on in there. Didn't want to wake me up. Well, I was awake when he got up. And he's getting around there trying to find these things and put them in his bag and trying to find these clothes. We had hunting jackets that looked just alike. Only mine was reversible. And he got over there in the dark, and he found my little jacket, and he put it on. And the sleeves came way up here. And he's looking at that, and he's looking at it, and he's going like this. And he reached down to zip it up, and he got a hold of that double zipper tab, and his didn't have that. He looked at that, and he looked at it, and he held it up, and he said, "Now, I got you wasn't on there yesterday." And I said, Paul, what's going on? I'm trying to get your little stinking jacket on. And he took it off and wadded it up and threw it behind the bed, I was telling you, and just stomped out of there, man, madder than a hornet. He didn't know I was awake, but you wasn't on there yesterday.
Hey, Jimmy, don't you do Good Old Mountain Dew? One of Grandpa's signature songs. Don't you do that sometimes at the Opry? I think we ought to sing a chorus or two of Good Old Mountain Dew. And as we remember our friend Grandpa Jones. Hey, will that work? Just jump in there. Yeah, just jump in there.
Down the road here at the meet, there's an old holler tree where you lay down $1 or 2. Yeah, you go round the bend and you come back again with a jug full of good old Mountain Dew. Yeah, they call it that good old Mountain Dew. And no matter refuse it I do, I'll shut my mouth and get out my jug with that good old Mountain Dew. Come here, man. Got a still on the hill where he runs off a cow or 2. And the buzzards in the sky gets a grunt they can't fly from smelling that good old Mountain Dew. Yeah, they call it that good old Mountain Dew. And they might refuse it free. I'll hush up my mouth if you fill up my jug with that good old Mountain Dew. My Uncle Lord, he's sawed off and short, and he measures about 4 feet 2. But he thinks he's a giant when you give him a pint of that good old Mountain Dew. Yeah, they call it that old Mountain Dew, and they might refuse it. I'll shut my mouth if you fill my jug with that good old Mountain Dew. Yeah, that good old Mountain Dew.
Charlie Walker, you have been so quiet back there, and I know you're one of the greatest singers in the world of the old Western swing kinds of songs. I think we need something like that out of you about now.
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. Get a microphone down there. We want all the stories we can get.
This has turned into a Grandpa Jones show, and that's the way it should be, because he was dear to all of us. I hunted with him for over 30 years, and in fact, Grandpa and Bud Wendell and Tex Ritter and I started the Grand Ole Opry duck hunt in 1968, and we hunted every year up until he finally got to where he had a hard time getting in and out of the boat and everything. But one time back in the late 50s, you know, when rock and roll got so big, country music artists like Ernest Tubb that was selling like 200,000 on a single, and I know I wrote one of his songs, I know about what they sold. They dropped off to like 30 or 40,000, and you couldn't give songbooks or record albums away on the road. And the people just weren't coming, and some of these folks went through that stage. Well, they had a show in the Midwest someplace, and I don't remember the town, but Grandpa was on the show, and people were coming from every direction, just one of those things that clicked. Somebody run back in Grandpa's dressing room and said, Paul, get your albums, your books, pictures, anything you got to sell. Said, we're having the biggest crowd that we've seen in years. They're just coming from every direction. And Paul said, well, wouldn't you know, the floor's is sagging with them at home, and I ain't got a one with me. People had quit taking them. I mean, you know, it just got to where you could.
Charlie, you were talking about during that time period when rock and roll was big. In late 58 and early 59, I had probably one of the biggest rock and roll hits called The All-American Boy. And I'm the only guy in the world who was covered by Grandpa Jones. I recorded this as a joke about 3 days before I went in the Army, and I was in basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And they're having a big Grand Ole Opry show at the fairgrounds in Louisville. So I got me a pass. And I went up there, and I think Don Gibson was on the show. And here came Grandpa out there. And this song was about well, I got drafted 6 months after Elvis. And it was, everybody thought it was about Elvis getting drafted into the Army because it was called the All-American Boy. Gather around, cats, and I'll tell you a story. Well, here come Grandpa, and he hit that banjo, and he said, "Gather around, cats, and I'll tell you." And he did it all the way through. Of course, it was just an old talking blues funny song. But I've got a story I want to tell about Jim Ed Brown in a minute.
Go ahead.
Well,
We need one on Jim Ed. We need one. Yeah.
we want to do it while Jim Ed's here, so he can deny it. Well, we were doing a tour in England and Europe, all over Europe, and we were in England, and we were to play Wembley. And we went to a rehearsal in about 10 o'clock in the morning. By the time we got back to the hotel, there was no food, nothing to eat. And we asked around, and Jim Ed and I were starved to death. And somebody said, well, on the second floor, they have some snacks. So Jim Ed and I went up to the second floor, and really it was a bar where people were drinking, but they had a big table there full of cheese and crackers and a little fruit. So I started gathering my plate and putting cheese on there, and I picked up one, and of course I'd smell it before I put it in my plate. I picked up this one, it was Limburger, and I just laid it right back down. Limburger cheese, I don't like that. And Jim Ed we were in the middle of a story, he was talking, and he wasn't paying any attention. He picked that Limburger up and put it on his plate. And I thought, well, some people do like it. So we went over and sat down at our table, and I was eating my cheese, and it was wrapped, had wrappers on it. I unwrapped mine, I took a bite of it. Jim Ed unwrapped his and took a big mouthful of it and went silent. He went totally silent, and he had his mouth full of something that he really didn't want in there. And the first thing he did was blamed it on me. He looked at me and he said, "You SOB." And he really didn't know what to do with it. So finally, eventually, he spit it out. And I said, well, let's try something here. I took that Limburger and I rubbed it around the back of my cushions where I was sitting, put it all in there. I said, now let's move over here. So Jim Ed and I moved across from there, and people would come and sit down in that chair, and they'd sit there for about 10 seconds, and they'd start going, and move. We watched about 10 people sit in that chair and move until we couldn't take it no more, so finally we left. That's my Jim Ed Brown story. Today he had his mouth full of something.
There's a little more to that.
No, there isn't. That's all there is.
There's a little more to that. Bobby got some more of that stuff and put it in his pocket, and he took it up to my room and put it under the head of my bed, under the mattress. And we were staying there. You weren't going to tell that, were you? We were staying in that hotel for about a week. And let me tell you something. By the time, did it ever get right? Woo! I finally had to move. And I don't know that they ever found out what was causing that smell in that room.
Well, we knew.
I finally figured it out and left. But he put it put it under between the mattresses, and
took a lot of toilet paper to get rid of that.
I tell you what, he's bought me a bunch of dinners since then for that too.
Of course, nobody else in this room ever played practical jokes on anybody on the road, did you? Go Pruitt. I see it already in your eyes. What'd you do?
Not real practical jokes, but when I first started in the business and got my bus and got going on the interstates and running up and down the road, every time I would get into a town where it was going to be, we thought a really big crowd, and the records was doing good in that area. And if the bus was dirty, I had this roll made that had Tammy Wynette's name on it, had Brenda Lee's name on it, and it had Dottie West's name on it. We'd get into these towns where there was going to be a good crowd, and if the bus was nice and nasty, and we didn't have time to get it washed before we went to the show, I'd just roll up Tammy's name or Dottie's name or somebody else's name and leave it on the front of the bus. So
Jim Ed did some of that, too.
Jim Ed was Jim Ed was good at that too.
You had James Brown on the front of your bus one time.
We got into Dallas, Texas. Well, everybody that buys a new bus, they've got that thing, the marquee thing up there at the front. So you can put about 15 or 20 names on it. So I turned in all of these names, of all of my friends and people I knew, and all the way from Elvis to Liz Taylor and everybody else. And James Brown. We got into Dallas, Texas, and we got lost. We were trying our best to get out of town, and John Brand was driving the bus for me at the time. And John finally turned around to me, and we weren't paying any attention to anything. And he said, "Jim Ed," he said, "I'm lost." Well, I started looking around, and we're right in the middle of an underprivileged area of town. We were in an area where you didn't say too much, us white boys. We just kept our mouth shut. And so I said, "Well, what are we going to do?" He said, "I don't know, but we're going to have to stop and ask somebody how to get out of town." So I remembered that I had James Brown up there on the marquee. I rolled James Brown up on the marquee. And let me tell you, he got us out of town quick. We didn't have a minute's trouble. But it's funny, though, that you can, and Liz Taylor, you could roll up Liz Taylor or Elvis or somebody going down the road. And boy, it's amazing, the stares and and they'll pass you and then they'll come back and they'll pass you again. They'll come, looking, saying, are they really on there? But, oh yeah, these truck drivers, there's something.
That story Bobby told about the cheese brought to mind my remembrances of the early, not the present day and not the guy we know him now, but the early Johnny Cash tours.
Oh, yes.
And I think all of us here have a story about the early Johnny Cash tours. One of the main ones, if Gordon Terry traveled with him, and if Gordon didn't like the color of his hotel room, he'd go out and buy some Kimtone and paint it. Purple or green or whatever. He'd do a good job, but he just painted it black if he wanted to. And if the manager, they set up all night and disturbed the other guests, and Johnny always paid for any damage that somebody might cause. But if a manager of a hotel gave him too much trouble, they would go down and buy a bale of hay. Now, you've seen it when it's together, it's not much. But when you undo it, they'd take it in a hotel room and undo this bale of hay, and it would be up chest high all over the room. Then they'd release 500 baby chickens up on top of the hay, close the door, and go downstairs and check out. One time, he went to an alligator farm and bought 500 baby alligators and put them in the swimming pool, and then went and checked out. But the early Johnny Cash days were something to behold.
It was hard pressed to get a room with different places.
Oh, you couldn't. Yeah.
Yeah, you tell them, you were from Nashville, the Grand Ole Opry. You can't stay here. Yeah.
That happened to me in Frankfurt, Germany. You don't know Johnny Cash, do you?
Hey, Bill, I was on this tour in 1957 with the Baby Chickens.
Yep.
I was on that tour. Yeah, he bought 500, and it was about a 4 or 5 story hotel. Yeah, and he released them all over the place. I mean, he released them in the hall, on each floor, and I'm telling you what, that there was pandemonium.
Luther Perkins was the instigator of most of that.
Gordon Terry wasn't bad.
Gordon Terry and Johnny Western and a few of the others were in there.
He had help.
Yeah.
Two Carnell.
Yeah.
Hey, can I tell you a Glenn Sutton and Stan Hitchcock story?
No, they're too wild.
We don't allow those.
Do we have time?
Where'd that Western swing song go that Charlie was going to do over there?
Let me tell this one story, then we'll do it. We were in Miami at the Americana Hotel, the CBS convention, and I was on CBS and a whole bunch of that. They had a lot of pop acts, Tony Bennett and all these guys, and Billy Sherrill had just started producing me, and so Billy was down there. Well, Billy and some guys decided to get away from the hotel, and they went over to the Castaways. They had some girly shows and stuff going on over there at the time, and so they went over, and in the meantime, Stan Hitchcock and Glenn Sutton I don't know if you guys had been into anything. I just don't know about that part of it. But I know they were walking around right outside the hotel. They had these alligator gardens, and they didn't know there was alligators in there. They pick up about a 5 or 6 foot long alligator. Said, "Let's take this up and put it in Billy Sherrill's bed." One of them got the thing. Now this really happened. He got the alligator around the head. One of them had him with a tail. They took it through the hotel lobby at 4 o'clock in the morning. One of the bellhops there looked at that. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. They got it up on the elevator, took it up to Billy Sherrill's room, pulled the covers down, pushed the alligator down in the bed. Just nothing but the head was right up toward the front. Well, the alligator had been in there for a few minutes, and he couldn't breathe, I guess, with no air in there. Billy Sherrill, these guys come in. They'd been on this party. And Billy propped down on the bed, and he said, "What's happening, guys?" One of them reached and pulled that cover back, and there's this alligator. Of course, the alligator's mouth went open like this. Oh, it was a mess. And then so after they had all the fun they could have there, they said, well, Goddard Leveson, who was the head of CBS at that time, was up on the next floor, and they were on like the 10th floor. Said, well, let's take this thing and we'll throw it up on his balcony, and we'll call him up and tell him we saw a flying alligator coming out. I don't know. And of course they tried to do it. Well, the thing slipped out of their hands and it fell 10 floors and killed the alligator. The hotel was very upset about it. And all these jukebox operators the next morning, they were laughing their head off. So, okay,
you want to sing us a song?
Yeah, I'm going to
do.
You
better sing.
F chord. Let's do. Pick me up, okay? You were mine for just a while. Now you're putting on the style, and you've never once looked back at your home across the track. You're the gossip of the town, but my heart can still be found where you tossed it on the ground. Pick me up on your way down. Everybody now, here we go. Pick me up on your way down when you're blue and all alone. When their glamour starts to bore you, come on back where you belong. You may be their pride and joy, but they'll find another toy, and they'll take away your crown. Pick me up on your way down. Made you haughty and so rude. Your new friends can take the blame. Underneath you're still the same. When you learn these things are true, I'll be waiting here for you as you tumble to the ground. Pick me up on your way down. Pick me up on your way down. When you're blue and all alone, when their glamour starts to bore you, come on back where you belong. You may be their pride and joy, but they'll find another toy, then they'll take away your crown. Pick me up on your way down.
Bill, I never know whether Mel Tilly's stories are true or not, but I heard one this weekend, it was attributed to him. It said that Mel went to a dentist, and the dentist observed that Mel stuttered. And the dentist said, well, yeah, I used to stutter, but I cured it. Mel said, how? He said, I made love to my wife in every room of my house. She ought to try it. He said, if you do, come back in a couple of weeks and let me know. So a couple of weeks, Mel came back, and he said, you do what I said? He said, yeah. He said, well, did it work? He said, no, but you got a lovely house.
Is his wife home? Are we on, Mel Tillis? Well, I love it. We did a movie together, Mel and I did. It's called Cotton Picking Chicken Picker. I mean, that's about as long as your book title. Well, the title was longer than the movie. No, it was for the drive-ins, you know, of America. The drive-ins, hard tops they call them. And we was doing this cotton picking chicken pickers, and we were doing it in Florida. We did it all in Florida, and Mel was supposed to be a stuttering radio operator. All right, you got it? So that morning we was all out there. They took up 2 helicopters. The Cameron one, Mel, and he was looking for Hound Dog Bergen, was his brother, and so he was looking for him. So they was in the helicopter trying to find him. And Mel got on the radio and said, "Hound Dog Bergen, where are you? Come in, Hound Dog Bergen. We cannot find you. We've looked every place in this world for you and cannot find you nowhere. Where are you at, Hound Dog Bergen?" And they put a sign in the window, "Cut. Bring it down." And when it got down there, the producer walked over to Mel and said, "Mel," he said, "you're supposed to be a stuttering radio operator." Mel said, "Damn, I guess I learned my lines too good."
Mel and I were stationed in Lincoln, Nebraska, and also in Okinawa together.
Did he stutter then?
What kind of soldier
Worse,
was he?
worse. He stuttered then worse than he does now. He was known all over the base as a kid that could sing but couldn't talk. And I've heard a lot of stories about Mel, you know, and most of them are true. Especially the one about the parachute, because I'm the one that was on the airplane. It was one of the duties of the flight engineer to brief the passengers when we were carrying passengers. And we were headed to Goose Bay, Labrador. And I was telling them, I said, now, you know, I had about 5 or 6 guys gathered around. I said, now, we don't expect to bail out, but if we do, here's a hatch, you will go out. Make sure your harness is cinched up. I said, as you go out the door, count to about 5 and pull the D-ring. That went all good, but just one little kid, skinny kid, he said, "Excuse me, Sergeant." He said, I said, "You pull the handle immediately when you clear the airplane." And that's a true story.
And that was Mel Tillis.
That was Mel Tillis, yes.
Bobby Lord, what was the football story about Mel?
Well, Mel and I went to high school at about the same time, and Mel went to Pahokee. I went to Plant High School in Tampa. And we were discussing football days, and Mel said, you know, when I went out for football, I went out for quarterback. But we were penalized so much for delay a game. I switched over to end. And they called him Crazy Legs Tillis in those days.
Yeah. Well, I have a Mel Tillis story. But everybody knows how much I love to fish. I fish a lot with little Jimmy Dick and me and Bobby Lord. And we all fish a lot together. But I had never been to Florida before in the 65. See, when I start talking about Mel, I start stuttering. And Mel said, "Well, let's go to Florida and fish." And he says, "I'll be your guide, and I'll show you around." And I said, "Great." He said, "I know a place down there where you catch big largemouth." So we did. We jumped out. I had just bought a brand new Cadillac. I was a big shot. So Mel got in the car, and we were driving to Florida. And we get down there, and Mel, as my guide, would say, "Well, now, if you..." He said, "We'll get it on the way back." And we finally got started fishing over there on the St. Johns River, right at the bottom part of Lake George. And Mel and I were in the boat fishing, and he was fighting a big old bass, and he was coming around behind me on the boat, and he said, "I'm he said, falling about the time he hit the water, right behind me." And I grabbed him by the ankle and leg and pulled him back in, and he stood there soaked. And he said, "I always fall in."
I saw some pictures recently of Bobby and Jimmy and Bobby Lord and who else?
Jerry Reed.
And Jerry Reed went fishing down in Florida, and I saw those, privileged to see those pictures, and I saw little Jimmy with a fish as big as he is. That is a huge fish. No, it really is. I saw the fish threw Jimmy back, I think, you know. That was a great catch. Beautiful. Yeah, he slows Jimmy.
I seen Gene Shepard catch an 80-pound fish down there at Panama City. 89-pound, wasn't he?
Bobby Lord we done the first, me and Boxy done the first outdoor sportsman thing that they had on WS, yeah. And Bobby was the host of this thing. We went out about 30 or 40 miles, and it got a little rough. And Bobby was supposed to be talking to me, you know, and all of a sudden, Bobby was real quiet. And they was, yeah, they was telling him to talk. They'd say, "Talk, Bobby, talk." You know, you're supposed to be asking her a question. I looked over, and I thought, uh-oh. So I started talking to Bobby. I said, "Well, Bobby, all of our kids has grown up." Bobby was green right around here. Well, he was seasick, friends, and I call it 89-pound grouper. Yeah.
That brought me back, though.
That but it was really rough. But I thought, here's a big fisherman. Boy, he was green, literally green right now. I thought, oh dear. Yeah, about 40 miles out. Yeah, way out. No, you couldn't see land nowhere. Only thing you could see is about waves about 40, 50 feet high. That's the only time I've ever really been scared.
I have to tell you a little fishing story. This is not a fishing story of Bobby Bear, or Jerry Reed, but of my grandson, John Robert, who is at 2 years old. He could throw a Zebco the length of this studio, and I taught him how to fish by taking him out and throwing the rod out, and I'd get a fish on, and I'd say, "Here he is, John Robert, you reel him in." And he'd reel him in. And so after he was 4 years old, he could fish with his own lure and catch fish regularly. And so we were standing on this lake bank throwing, and he caught one fish, he caught two fish, he caught three fish, he caught four fish. And I was fishing with a fly rod, and I hadn't caught a thing. And so when he got the fifth fish on, he walked over to me and said, "Here he is, Papa, I got him on, you reel him in."
Wasn't that fun? I love to hear the real stories about their practical jokes. And wasn't that a great story from Bobby Lord about his grandson? Where else on earth are you going to be able to enjoy these great stars in your living room? I'm so privileged to get to do this. I hope you're enjoying them as much as I am. If you've got the whole series, you probably already looked at the next videotape box and know what's coming up. Del Reeves and The Only Girl I Can't Forget, Jimmy Dickens and Life's Turned Her That Way, Jeannie Seeley, Can I Sleep in Your Arms Tonight, Mister? Jan Howard with Rock Me Back to Little Rock, Billy Walker and the great gospel song Jesus Walks In, Leroy Van Dyke does that great recitation, The Master's Touch, Margot sings her big hit, It Only Hurts for a Little While, Bill Anderson does Pope Oaks, and then the craziest thing happens. The stars start singing crazy songs, Pie Peachy Pie Pie and Peel Me an Anner, and, well, you just won't believe it until you see it. Sanity does return when Johnny Russell shows up with the baptism of Jesse Taylor. Melba Montgomery does No Charge, and Jimmy Dean leads the reunion gang in Big Bad John. So if you haven't received nourishment in a while, you might want to take a break before you start this next video. I'm Larry Black, and I'll be back. Will you?